Usually technology projects start and fail because either one or multiple of these dimensions need to be worked on. So what are those? Strategy and leadership, technology and infrastructure, process and your operations, people and data. Any of those fall through the cracks, you're going to have a lot of trouble implementing AI, both at the individual level and at the organizational level. Hi, everybody. My name is Ariana.
Hey everybody, my name is TJ Armich.
We're the managing partners and co-founders of Syncra Group. We are an EHS technology consulting firm. We work with companies across the spectrum of systems transformation, AI enablement, and really help build their digital maturity within their EHS programs. Today, we're going to be talking about how AI uncovers the bottlenecks within your programs, especially in the current age. AI is the shiny object. It's what everybody wants to run, what everybody wants to use. And a lot of what we tend to uncover in our client projects, conversations that we have with EHS leaders, is why AI readiness will stall before it even starts.
What we find when we start talking about AI with some of our clients is that the basics are the bottlenecks. We go back to what are the systems, what are the processes, what is the foundations of the strategy and leadership. And so when we talk to those clients, we start to uncover and find the information underneath that there are some cracks in that foundation. So while they want to start with AI, we move back to those basics.
We kind of have a systematic way that we evaluate that. It is part of something that we'll share here at the end, our digital maturity assessment. And we've come up with these, what we call dimensions, because we've realized that regardless of the size of your organization, the maturity of your organization, the industry in which you work, or the jurisdiction in which you operate, usually technology projects start and fail because either one or multiple of these dimensions need to be worked on. So what are those? Strategy and leadership, technology and infrastructure, process and your operations, people and data. Any of those fall through the cracks, you're going to have a lot of trouble implementing AI, both at the individual level and at the organizational level. But I want to be clear that nothing we're talking about here makes AI special. This kind of assessment and some of the stuff we're going to talk about today applies to anywhere you're trying to implement technology, whether that's software, wearables, automation. If you can't answer the questions or meet that level of maturity that you need to, all of these projects are going to fail. I think AI is just a really good way to assess where you currently are.
Yeah, and I think this is a great place to start on what that top level is, that first dimension and something that everybody skips. It's that strategy and leadership. So when someone comes to us and says, we got to do something with AI, like where does that conversation actually go? What does that reveal about their strategy? And typically that might be just an EHS manager that's kind of stuck in the middle. So yeah, what are we seeing here?
Yeah, I think AI, like we keep talking about, it's a door, but there's no destination. Do something with AI is usually a directive or some type of mandate from someone in the C suite, a director, a VP, but it's not actually tied into the overall strategy for the EHS department or whoever they roll up under in operations or even the organization. It's this pressure to feel like if you don't do something with it, then you're behind and your competitors are going to move ahead, or just we're being left behind, our jobs are going to go away, and we're not really sure what to do about it. So the real question underneath is, what do they want it to do? Are we trying to bring efficiencies? Are we trying to identify new opportunities? I think taking the pulse of the organization here is very important. What's leadership saying about AI? Is it a positive sentiment? Is it a negative sentiment? Have tools been blocked? Is there tool sprawl and people are just expecting kind of productivity? It really is important to understand what the strategy is. And if there isn't one, what does that actually mean? Where do we start? Where do we go? The trend that we see is champions, usually some AI pilled EHS person that really sees the potential in the tool. And what we really encourage them is to be the one to start the conversation, be the one to start the Slack channel, the Teams channel, to say like, hey guys, this is what I'm working on with the tools that we have available. What are you working on? Leadership will start to see that. And then above that, leadership within EHS also needs to be within the organizational leadership, because I guarantee you at this point in time, there's some type of steering committee, some type of organizational committee. The board is asking about these things. And so it's really important to cascade that ownership up the chain so that the resourcing, the enablement, and the coaching or the procurement of technology all speak the same language and kind of riding in the same wave. But if you do things in a silo, you will never be able to scale that. So just keep that in mind and get your leadership involved. You'll be surprised what kind of answers you may get.
Yeah, and I think it's a topic that we always talk about, right? There's the individual competency with AI and what the strategy is there, and what is the organizational strategy, and one can really outpace the other if
Hmm.
that organizational doesn't really step in and say, hey, this is our strategy, this is what everyone wants to be on, or the tools that we want to use, and create that foundation, right? So we've seen organizations have really talented EHS professionals or people in other domains that have really outpaced and built a foundation for themselves individually, but that might not plug in with the way that the organization is going to take the step.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about going back to the basics, I mean, I think it's important to realize that typically, even at a corporate level or leadership level, when they say this is what we're doing with AI, they're really talking about tooling. It's we want to get people trained on how to use Microsoft Copilot, which I think is an okay start, right? I like the enthusiasm and the investment in ensuring our people have that level of technical expertise. But I think it opens the door to some of the other topics that we're going to talk about is rethinking your processes, how you do work, where AI takes the load and where there's a human reviewer, where we're really trying to supplement or reduce the administrative load that's on EHS professionals. So, thinking about strategy outside of tooling is really important. And that includes responsible use and governance and guardrails. If you don't have a policy around how you're going to use computer vision technology, but you implement it, what we will and won't do with this data. Those are the kinds of conversations that having that strategy and that leadership buy in and executive sponsorship is going to start to drive. And that's how you start to grow that maturity. But speaking of tooling, when people think of safety tech, they typically think of software, systems, tools, things they can buy, things that they can start clicking around in. A lot of people think of AI as a huge lever for data analysis. We hear the words predictive analytics and risk assessments, and we typically jump to the other end of all these cool use cases. But you go point AI at these systems, what do we see our clients finding underneath the hood?
When it comes to technology and infrastructure, that conversation starts with AI, but we have to really bring back and look at that foundation that I mentioned earlier. And that is the tooling, getting an accurate account of what's out there. And when we talk to EHS professionals, sometimes they don't even know why they procured a tool or what its main purpose is. They may use it for something, but it may not be geared towards that. And I like to think about AI like being a switchboard operator and plug into everything. And so as you're getting a call from something, you can call something else, right? And
Right.
having that interconnectedness. But if you think about those switchboards and the boxes like you see in the movies, if you're missing those and you're not able to connect them, that foundation is broken and that wire is cut. So when you're in spreadsheets and you're in a different EHS software for environmental, or you're doing something with incident management in the Google suite, that's creating a little bit of hardship where then you need to get back to creating a management system of how you're going to operate. And so that's where our conversations are typically moving. It's like when we want to get AI and we want to throw the AI layer on there and create more efficiency, well, what is the outcome of the data that you want to get? And it can't reach across the infrastructure if you don't have it connected. And so creating that strong baseline, maybe for a document repository, for how to's and your data layer, and thinking that through deliberately is really going to set you up to now start setting the expectations for the organization.
I think the tooling is an important piece because you realize that the power of AI is that interconnectedness and context layer. We talk a lot about knowledge graphs and context, but your context doesn't just live within your EHS systems, right? You may have 5 systems to manage EHS, you may have one. But what else informs that information? It's your operational data, it's your maintenance data, it's your people data, it's your project data, your production data. When we talk about data centralization, I think we want to grab the low-hanging fruit, and that's like make sure all of our EHS data lives somewhere. We know a lot of people aren't even there, but that would be the first thing. And then it's let's get the data team in the room, let's get the IT team in the room. Do we have a data warehouse? Where are we plugging and playing this? The best teams that we see using LLMs as their kind of go-to tool, they're not necessarily building MCPs and APIs directly to EHS systems. I think that will become more commonplace. it still needs to flow into that centralized database, right? So whatever that operational database that can pull and harness from these other pieces, being able to chat with that data that extends beyond EHS, I think that's where we're headed. But we know through our work that a lot of people aren't there yet. But AI is a forcing function that is really driving conversations around that and frustrations. People are spending a lot of money, wondering what they should build, if they should buy, why can't I connect this thing? Why do I need a change order to get my data out of your system? So I think we're going to see a lot more of those concerns. Things have been very stay and status quo, and AI is kind of ruffling feathers. And your typical EHS leader to ask questions because they see finance moving forward, they see HR moving forward, they see marketing, and they feel a little left behind because they're locked behind these walls. We're in a very interesting time when it comes to the EHS technology and systems. So definitely one to watch.
And that's why we mentioned in the previous section, oh, okay, just add AI. But you can't add that layer without the plumbing because it's what it tries to use, right? And what we build into now next is the process and operations. It really is able to find the gaps in that because I don't want to belabor it, but if you have broken processes, it's just going to exacerbate that, right?
I mean, we say it a lot. It's a problem first, tech second approach. And I think that you can even apply that to when you're talking about your process and your operations. In our discovery calls, we like to one, understand the kind of work getting done. But immediate question we ask is what's your highest risk? What's your risk profile? Right? It tells me a couple of things that they know they have an idea of what that is. And when they're connecting that to the frustrations they're having with the software or technology, we can start to formulate a general problem statement based off of that. I have dynamic operations because I do utilities work and our job site changes every day. And I don't have a tool to help me track pre job task planning and ensuring that people are able to correctly identify hazards and that the controls different problem statement than I work in a manufacturing facility. We do the same thing every single day. We don't have audits and assessments. We don't have risk assessments or ergonomic assessments on our stations. And we need technology to help us get to that data faster and then do something with it. Those problems are different, but what it all comes down to is tell me how you do that thing, right?
Right.
What
Your process.
what does your pre-task planning process look like? What does your ergonomic risk assessment process look like? Who's responsible? Who inputs? Who contributes? And who does something with the data on the back end? And you learn a lot in those early conversations. The tech may be the driver and the forcing function, but in reality, we haven't actually defined that process. It's kind of living in people's heads. Someone retired. There's a revolving door of directors or site managers. You start to see the silos. We see EHS people or safety people reporting to the site with a dotted connected line up to corporate. And so corporate is a little bit ivory tower. It's kind of hard to see what's happening. And so there might be a corporate program. So we are RISE certified and we have a checkbox, but that's not the reality of people doing the work. That's the black line, blue line, work as done versus work as imagined. And digitizing these processes really forces the conversation of this is how we do something. I think you've experienced that in some recent client
Yeah,
work.
I'd say like organizations are dynamic. The context of work changes depending on where you are. And it's good for corporate to try to run those programs, whether it's the processes or the management system and push that down. But like you said, work as done and work as imagined. If they've started to build those workflows, maybe they've started that as, hey, we just got to get something down. We got to build a process to make sure we documented it. But organizations, they mature, people leave, you lose some of that context. But as it changes, you need to shift, and adding AI as a layer on top just sort of exacerbates those broken
Yeah.
processes, or it really
Yeah.
shines a light on it, right?
We talk about a lot of negatives of doing it though, but I think there's a positive spin around how you can leverage AI to fill those gaps. AI is a great tool for information gathering, right? If you're
Absolutely.
having calls with people in China and Germany and the States and South America and Asia, how do you guys do chemical management? And maybe you give them the breathing room to share that, right? Taking those transcripts, putting that into AI and saying, now draft me a corporate program that hits 60% of what everyone does and bring that back to a working group, right? Those are the
Yeah.
kinds of efficiencies that still require technical expertise, but everyone feels heard everyone knows they're going to have to compromise at some point, and it doesn't mean they can't still do their site or business unit level programs. But I think we spend so much time on calls anyway, and I don't think we do anything with the information or the brain dumping that we make people do. And so I'm a huge fan of recording conversations
Yeah,
and
same.
letting people know that we hear you, keep going, say as much as you need to, and then utilizing AI to ingest that data and find the common threads and really start to build the skeleton of what good looks like, and just creating that feedback loop, which is a great lean into the next one, which is people, right? If we're not implementing human centered technology, what are we doing? So you put a great tool in front of them and adoption never happens or it dies. What kind of conversations does that open?
I think that kind of just links that last thread that you said is as you would talk to groups around the regions and get their input, you need to collect that information. You need to see how the common threads are. People are hungry for information sharing and communication. And if you just do that in the silo and you put that tool in front of someone without laying out a plan for user acceptance testing or didn't take different criteria into account, people are going to build their shadow systems, right? And
Yeah.
they're going to use Excel because that's maybe what they're comfortable with. It doesn't open a door if you don't have adoption. And I heard an executive say today to me, it's like, well, this is the tool that we're using, and we're going to roll out all the modules, and everyone just needs to learn how to do it. And it's like, well, you have to take into consideration the generational trends of what's at your site. What is the capabilities of the tools, and taking into account the culture too, because not everyone is the same as the US, right? If you have a global
Mhm.
team in Australia or you have people in EMEA or APAC, they interact with tools differently. And so
Yep.
if nobody's in the loop, they don't trust that tool and it won't add up for them.
Yeah. Workers don't care about your tech, right? Usually, when someone's saying we need EHS software or technology or we have sprawled systems, in the same breath, they're complaining about what they actually do have, which might be one thing from a security software, from a risk management tool, something that has nothing to do with EHS. And they feel forced into it, right? They feel like, well, this is what the company has, so I'm forced to use it. And you can hear the frustration. And I'm like, how did your last system rollout go? Well, I logged in one day and I had a new button and I was told I had to use it. And when it comes to safety, there are certain things you can force, and there's a lot that is just built on culture and adoption. And that is the most important piece. So, our advice is bring people in early. Don't do things in a silo. You do not have to have a perfect business case to get input. That input is your business case, your cross functional stakeholders, your peers, the people on the ground, right? Do a health check. Ask how people feel about incident reporting today. What do people do? You can have the best shiny enterprise system on the planet. I still have talked to managers on the ground that are working in Microsoft Forms and other tools. And then on Friday from 1 to 3, they sit down and type it into a software. You are losing valuable data and insight from the field and from the floor when you implement things in a silo. So bring people in, make it a part of the culture, and close the loop. Don't make people report stuff that you're never going to address. AI will not fix any of those problems, right? It comes down to culture, process, and people most importantly. If you're not taking care of the small things and wrapping up those loose ends, you really start to lose the trust, and that has nothing to do with your technology, right?
Yeah, it's tying that leadership, that strategy, the people on the ground, right? The people who are doing the work, the adoption comes from them being heard and seeing the usefulness of that tech. And so say we had a perfect organization up until this point. The leadership was aligned. We know what we want to do with AI. We had a process. We have the people and culture. And we're moving through the technology and infrastructure is all set and it's ready for AI. I think that brings us to the last point, which is data. Where can we layer AI into data, whether that's modeling incident rates, reading descriptions, pulling out root cause analysis, or just looking at the numbers? And
Yeah.
should we trust that? Is it ready for that?
Yeah. I think you can have a whole session just on data. A couple of things to mention. One is start from the top and work your way down. A lot of times we build forms in a silo. People are still working within observation forms, near miss reporting forms, incident forms, inspection forms, investigation. frameworks where they fill out this piece of information. And so that puts you in a box. But I don't think that we do forms well at all, right? We collect so much unnecessary data because we think maybe one day we'll need it. And on our first discovery calls, we ask, what do you care about? What do you report out? What does your board care about? What does your team care about? What do your
What are
quarterly
the
meetings
metrics?
look like? What are your monthly? What are your weekly? What do your supervisors need? Okay, let's reverse engineer and figure out if you have current data, can you answer the questions that you have committed to, which should be your strategy, which is aligned with the business strategy? Can you answer that? That's kind of a first place to start. And I think that's where you typically find the most gaps. You can have 100 columns and you still can't answer simple questions. Engineer what you currently are capturing and being able to use AI to identify those data gaps, right? That's where the thought partnership comes in. You say, this is what we have now. These are the questions you try to answer. What do I need to do? And that's low hanging fruit. Anyone can go do that today with their current strategy, a license from your company, and your current reporting mechanism. But we realize we're not collecting enough data, we're collecting the wrong data. And I think the power of AI is that we can really synthesize that data and start to find new insights and at some point get to the predictive analytics that many people want to talk about. But again, there's so many things that come up before we're actually able to do that. And having access to that data, which we talked about earlier in the tech stack conversation, is one form isn't going to give you the whole picture. So just really realizing where your data sits, where the AI has access to it, what format that data is in. There's so many considerations.
I think doing data analytics, whether you're an Excel guru or not, it's able to AI is able to help you be a thought partner, and so at least help you think about different types of statistics, potentially different ways to look at a problem. Maybe it reveals a problem that you didn't even know. So I love the thought partner piece of it. Data is that last piece and is ultimately what people want to get to, but you have
Mhm.
to make it through the funnel, right? You got to make it through all of these pieces.
I think that's why we do assessments, right? Typically, people don't like the word discovery. They don't like digging because it's easier to say, we're going to buy the thing and the thing is going to fix it. And I think you've been in roles or worked on projects where you're like, why do we have this tool? Why do we have this tool? Well, we needed it for chemical management. Okay, what's our chemical management process? And I think when you have that second set of
Yeah.
eyes that hasn't necessarily been there, they're not super established in an organization, it opens a lot of things. So we took our experience and we turned that into a free digital maturity assessment. So we'll share the link and the QR code to that on the back end of this conversation. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. It's really a structured read of where you stand across the 5 dimensions that we talked about: strategy and leadership, technology stack, process, people, and data. It's not a grading exercise. It's a little flashlight, right? And what we do is try to score you based on your responses. And it assesses you and gives you some practical action items that you can take immediately and try to go tackle. Maybe it's a conversation with your VP. Maybe it's getting your data out of your system and running it through AI and doing an initial assessment. I think the biggest point to drive home as we wrap this up is AI is a door. Walk into it, embrace it. It's not going to go away. So you might as well start fixing those bottlenecks now. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I just say like this is potentially someone's 100th AI talk, right? And so I just want to make it clear you're not behind. The tools are always evolving and the processes are always changing. And hopefully you took away from this that we're not necessarily talking about AI, we're talking about the basics and the foundations, the plumbing of your EHS program. And so if you have that rock solid, AI is just an enabler on top of that. As Ari said, take that DMA, just see where you are, and if you need additional support, like we're here, reach out. You can LinkedIn us or reach out by email.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Hope you enjoyed this session and we'll see you on the other side.